Great. Okay, everybody, welcome. Welcome to ICAE 2026. It's our great pleasure to welcome you here today. I'm Jamie Barnes, co-organizing this conference with my colleagues, various colleagues, which we'll introduce in a minute. So welcome to this event. So we're welcoming a number of people here in person. We also have at least an equal number online who will be participating with us as well from all over the world. So I just run through a few kind of introductory things first of all, before sort of segueing into introducing us to the theme of this year's conference. So this year's theme is connections. And so I was thinking about this morning, and I have made my little notes, my very little notes. And the first thing I wrote down was connections, question mark. And I really didn't get much further than that. Because whenever I think about connections, it also propels me into thinking about what appears to be the opposite of connections. In other words, separation. And I'm not going to say disconnectedness, because I don't think it's necessarily disconnectedness is the opposite of connectedness in a strange kind of way. But I get thinking about connections and separations as well, because somehow for me, life seems to be a process of both connectivity, but also separation as well. So thinking about a young baby, Nadia last night was showing me a picture of her beautiful grandchild who's just a few weeks old. And as we all know, kind of within psychoanalytic sort of frameworks and stuff, for a very young baby, there's not really this formed sense of self yet. So there's this kind of immersive presence that presumably we can imagine, and we've all been there at one point in our lives, that the baby experiences this sense of kind of immersive connectedness with the world. And there's not this kind of distinction of a self yet come into being. But it would be wrong for us all to remain as babies. And we can't really remain in that place. That's not our destiny as human beings, to remain in that immersive kind of oceanic sense of connectedness. So inevitably, the process of our becoming human also involves a process of separation, whereby we begin to separate from that nurturing kind of oceanic sort of care. And we begin to become something distinct in the world. And then, of course, then we enter societies, or as we have all probably done here, grow up in societies which tend to kind of emphasize the individual, okay, and kind of reinforce the fact that we are these separate beings, separate from each other. And then we begin to enter a process whereby thinking, well, maybe that's not the case. Maybe that is actually not the case. Maybe we are connected in mysterious ways which our culture and our society doesn't really kind of reinforce to us. And so many of us then begin to encounter things, whether it's to do with sort of deep nature connectedness, or whether it's experiences of psychedelics, or whether it's experiences of kind of mystic experience, or various kind of spiritual traditions, which kind of reintroduce us to what we kind of knew as a baby, this kind of oceanic sense of connectedness. And often those encounters can feel like a stripping back of a veil, like we've been in some sense kind of blinded to something really important about reality, to do with our essential connectedness with one another. And yet, we're not babies anymore. So we're not just seeking a return to that kind of primordial sense of connectedness. We have also been separated, and we've undergone processes of individuation, which are really, really important in terms of us being unique selves in the world as well. And when I've been thinking a little bit about kind of what it means to be a unique self, because that ultimately connects to the starting place that all of us have here in the sense that we're autoethnographers, okay? So there's something important about that auto. There's something important about that center of experience, socially placed, contextually placed, that center of experience from which all of us are going to be speaking and sharing over these next couple of days. And when I think about that center of experience and that auto and think about, well, what makes it? What are some of the things that make it distinct from that which is outside of itself? One of the things that I've been kind of dwelling on, at least in the last few days, is that we, as that auto, as that center of experience, are also a kind of center of ethical responsibility. And an ethical responsibility in the sense that each of us, within context, within situations, within whatever place we find ourselves in our world, we each have an ability to choose as well, to choose how we respond to the world, to choose how we navigate our way in and through the world. And I don't think that if we had not become separated, if we'd not separated ourselves, then we wouldn't have that. And so that's part of becoming fully human, is that sense that I am an auto that carries ethical responsibility for how I navigate myself in the world. And I alone can choose that. Nobody can choose that for me, and I can't choose that for anybody else. There's the boundaries of the auto whereby I can't choose how other people are going to navigate in the world. I can only make that choice for myself. So there's something about that. There's something about that being an auto and carrying that ethical responsibility, which is somehow the product of exploring the boundaries of separateness and connectedness. So I think in these days that these 2 days that we're going to be together, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to kind of press in to, through our mutual work together, what that really means, what that means in terms of bringing our experiences, our autoethnographic experiences, to bear on these questions of connectedness, but also implicitly separation as well. I've been reading, I don't know if any of you have been reading Ian McGilchrist's work. I don't know, he seems to be popping up everywhere recently. It's a fantastic book, The Matter with Things, very, very big book, very long book. Chapter 25, Consciousness and Matter, is an absolute classic. But in there, he talks about these kind of opposites as being like kind of polar opposites. So we might think of connectedness and separateness as kind of polar opposites. But like the poles, the north and south poles, they are connected. So they're part of the same kind of entity in some kind of way. And I'm wondering whether there's something about thinking about those things. They're not a duality, but as being two important elements which seem to contrast and contradict each other, but are actually kind of held in this place of creative tension, which is part of existence itself. So I'm wondering what will kind of come to bear from our own explorations of that and what people will share. I don't want to set anybody at unease because, like me, some of you may have only peripherally looked at the theme of the connections and prepared something and then thought, okay, yeah, I'll just kind of like plug that in with a little connective kind of theme in there. That's what I've done for my own presentation. So to set you at ease if you have done that. But even if you haven't prepared explicitly around the theme of connections, your work is going to speak to that because it's autoethnographic, because it's bringing in your experience, which will in some ways resonate and connect with the experience of others, but will also in some ways distinguish you as a unique self in the world as well. So welcome to the conference. This is room 1. So if you're presenting in room 1, you'll be in here. And room 2 is the room over there. So I look forward to a lovely couple of days with you all and with our colleagues online, of course. So yes, welcome. Okay, great. So we'll start the first session, session one, room one, connections and queerness. And first of all, we have Luke Anderson from Tennessee Tech University to talk to us with Please Stop Attacking My Marriage.
You know, tall people problems that happen. So when Jamie was introducing this conference being about connections, my presentation is a lot about the connection and disconnection that I feel with my own community. And so I'm going to read you an excerpt from an ongoing research project called Please Stop Attacking My Marriage. Ooh. February 2026. It is February, and I sit on the couch under my favorite blue blanket watching through the entire Downton Abbey series for maybe the 8th time with my husband. It's a comfort show we revisit in the doldrums of winter, full of familiar characters who feel like old friends at this point. I find myself quoting favorite lines or saying things like, "Oh, isn't this the episode when sad Edith sets a house on fire?" We are now in season 5, and house servants Anna and Mr. Bates are once again facing the possibility of prison, wrecking their marital bliss. They seem star-crossed at this point because they were kept apart for multiple seasons and went through a similar threat of prison in the 3rd season. Poor Anna and Bates had just started making plans for their future by considering the purchase of a house. And now it all comes crashing down again. At least I know they get a happy ending, so I can tune out during their constant angst while I unplug my phone from the charger and start scrolling through Instagram. I chuckle at a video from a female basketball player. I zoom in on a picture of a gorgeous library in Austria. I like a post of my kid's friend playing volleyball. Then I stop, frozen at what I see next. Tennessee House advances bill to delegitimize same-sex marriage. All 3 bills passed out of committee with unanimous approval from Republicans, despite little discussion of their necessity, constitutionality, or potentially negative financial impact. A story by Vivian Jones from the Tennessean. Here we go again. My face flushes, equal parts anger and fear. Internally, I think, calm down. We've been through this before, many times in the state. Don't you remember last year when you saw they were trying to overturn Obergefell versus Hodges? You saw an Instagram post saying that if you were same-sex married in America, you better get all your legal documents in order in case your marriage was nullified. You overreacted, made a list of documents some lawyer on Instagram said you should have, and called your lawyer friend in a panic. Thankfully, he came and sat in your living room, calmly talked you off the ledge, and said he would be shocked if anything like that was necessary, but he'd happily help with any protections you wanted. Deep breath, don't overreact again today. But shouldn't I have a strong reaction to this? Shouldn't I feel angry and upset and scared and targeted and righteously indignant and victimized and exhausted and targeted? Did I already say that? And ready to put up one hell of a fight? And what does delegitimization actually mean anyway? I can barely say it. Can they do that to those of us already gay married? Also, I hate having to qualify my marriage with extra adjectives, like it's not the same as everyone else's. I let out a long, deep sigh. What? Asked my husband. You don't want to know, I said through clenched teeth. And I read him the headline before opening the article to find out more. You know these things happen all the time here. It'll never go through, he says calmly. I cannot find his calm for myself. I wonder how others would feel if their marriage was never quite legally secure. It's strange to think you could be living with your husband and one day then by the stroke of a governor's pen, poof, he's your roommate. What actually changes? It wouldn't change anything about the nature of our relationship. We would still love each other. We would still be committed. We would still have a life together. But would it change how others perceived us or how we were treated? Would it delegitimize our status in our hometown? Would it prevent us from functioning in society like other couples, making it harder to visit each other in the hospital or get a home loan together? Oh shit. We are right in the middle of buying our house. Could this mean trouble with that process? There's no way this bill could go through and take effect before we get done with that, right? And my husband is about to retire and is listed on my insurance, so could he still get coverage if our marriage is nullified? Should he keep working? I run my hands through my hair and take a deep breath. Sensing my worry, he grabs my hand, still engrossed in the travails of Anna and Bates, watching them navigate an angst that suddenly feels more real than during our previous 7 viewings. I open the online article to read more in detail. A House committee devolved into shouts of protest and was hastily adjourned after Republicans approved a bill that would allow private citizens, groups, and businesses to no longer recognize same-sex marriage. I'm not sure who was shouting, but I'm thankful that at least someone put up a fight. At least there are other people who find this as ridiculous as I do, but what will that matter? I need to find out more. I opened a similar article from another news source. It starts, Tennessee lawmakers have advanced a host of anti-LGBTQ+ bills that would run counter to US Supreme Court precedent. Two measures, both proposed by Representative Gino Bolso, would challenge landmark cases that legitimize same-sex marriage and establish protections for discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Is his goal for Tennessee to be a trial case to push back same-sex marriage rights nationwide? My home state leading the charge against us? Next, I find an article from another news source. It reads, the bill would amend the Tennessee Code to specify the private businesses and citizens are not bound by federal ruling that recognize same-sex marriage. Under the Supreme Court case of Obergefell versus Hodges, same-sex marriage is protected as a right under the 14th Amendment. The right to discriminate. That's what we are spending Tennessee taxpayer money on when we are in the bottom third of states in children's economic well-being indicators and the bottom quarter for children's health indicators. I look up the bill itself, which says, as introduced, states that private citizens and organizations are not bound by the 14th Amendment or the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell versus Hodges to recognize a marriage between individuals of the same sex. Prohibits the board of professional responsibility from disciplining or sanctioning an attorney for declining to officiate a marriage between two persons of the same sex. If this bill passes and takes effect, I wonder how it might change my life. Would it have direct implications, such as businesses refusing to work with us because of our marriage? Could restaurants refuse to seat us or kick us out for holding hands? Could an electrician walk off the job because they saw a picture from our wedding on the dresser when he came in our home? Or would the ramifications be more subtle, creating a general atmosphere of hostility toward us in Tennessee? Unfortunately, there have been many bills like this aimed at nullifying and delegitimizing same-sex marriage in Tennessee. Since 2016, there has been a regularly proposed Tennessee Natural Marriage Defense Act reinforcing marriage as between a man and a woman through bills in 2015, 2017, and 2019. More recently, there was a proposed Tennessee Covenant Marriage Act in 2025 that is only between one male and one female. And House Bill 878 actually passed in 2024, allowing public officials and religious leaders with religious or personal objections to refuse to solemnize same-sex marriage. In 2024, there was even a bill proposed requiring a separate marriage application and license form for heterosexual marriage, which was another way to segregate. When I read about all these bills, I feel tired. The attacks on my marriage feel relentless in Tennessee, which leaves me in a perpetual state of anticipatory tension. Last year, I unplugged from social media and the news for almost 2 months as a coping mechanism, but at times that feels irresponsible. Should I stay vigilant and informed, ready to defend my family, even if it comes at a cost of my own mental health? No wonder I literally have a post-it on my computer screen at work that says, drop your shoulders and breathe. My body recognizes this is not a completely safe place for me to live. The next day, I have lunch with two opposite-sex married friends from work. I ask if either of them knows about this proposed bill. Neither of them do and appear a bit stunned by it. We have a conversation where I share how it makes me wonder if I should still live here. I tell them about the emotional weight of living in constant fear that your marriage could be undone. One friend seems on the verge of tears, the other nods intently. Neither of them has had someone in the state government threaten their marriage, and the emotional, legal, and practical realities of that situation wash over them for the first time as they pour out of my heart, through my mouth, and toward their ears. I admit that it would be easier to live somewhere less antagonistic, but this is my home. My husband was born and raised in our town. And if everyone in a same-sex marriage leaves the state, then nothing will ever change here. If I moved away, chances are they would not be talking about this subject over lunch, which is exactly the point. I put a face on the bill, adding the personal to the political. But will I always feel like it is worth this trade-off of living here regularly under attack, especially if this bill passes? I wonder aloud, and then lunch is over. I'm sorry to be a Debbie Downer during lunch, I conclude apologetically, but I'm not really sorry. Thank you for your time.
And the title is Celebrating 50 Years of Jewish Pride, an autoethnographic view on queerness, diaspora, and homeland in an American gay synagogue.
Thank you so much. On June 23, 2023, I attended the Pride Shabbat service marking the 5th anniversary of Congregation Bet Simchat Torah in New York City. Bet Simchat Torah is the first gay synagogue, American gay synagogue. Welcomed by the sound of the shofar and enthusiastic applause, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum opened the service by reflecting on the congregation's history and the legacy of the Stonewall Uprising. Addressing nearly 1,000 congregants and guests, she declared, "It's so moving to be here tonight. This is where Jews first began celebrating Pride. In February 73, a small group of New Yorkers demanded the right to be open, both Jewish and LGBTQ. Before the moment, you had to choose. If you wanted to remain connected to the Jewish community, you had to hide, suppress, and deny your pride. Those few individuals changed history, and tonight we stand on their shoulders. We are here together, become just as they taught us. We will stand together against the evil, comforting us in the country and all over the world." Rabbi Kleinbaum, this is Bet Simchat Torah, this is the service. Rabbi Kleinbaum's words capture one of the central dilemmas facing LGBTQ plus Jews, the negotiation between religious identity and gender and sexual identity. Previous scholarships have explored this negotiation among Orthodox LGBTQ plus Jewish, as Orit Abishai argued in her new book, and truth queer Jewish ritual practices such as the mikveh baptism ceremony, as Krasno shows, demonstrating the central role of religion in shaping queer identities. Drawing on participant observation conducted during the anniversary celebration, I examined how the synagogue as a space of worship reveals significant differences between Israeli and American Jewish LGBTQ communities. I focus on intergenerational interaction, relation, intra-LGBTQ plus gender dynamics, and questions of Jewish peoplehood. Contrary to the conventional assumption that the Jewish diaspora primarily looks toward Israel as a symbolic homeland, I propose the reversed movement. The homeland, represented by the Israeli ethnographer, learns from the queer Jewish experiences unfolding in the American diaspora. This perspective exposes tensions within the idea of transnational LGBTQ community, while revealing broader power relation between Israel and North America Jewry. I therefore suggest that understanding the intersection of Judaism and LGBTQ identities in Israel may require looking not only to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, but also to New York City. Methodologically, this paper adopts the autoethnographic approach. As a gay Israeli Jewish ethnographer, I use my own participation in Pride Shabbat to examine how ritual and liturgy cultivate what I call political Jewish queer imagination, an imagined reality in which Jewish and LGBTQ identity coexist harmoniously. At the same time, moments of dissonance expose the cultural and the political distance between my own Israeli assumptions and those of American Jewish LGBTQ communities, particularly regarding gender, intra-community politics, and the meaning of homeland. Finally, I employ the concept of diaspora, rather than exile, to explore how shared experiences of concealment, shame, and exclusion both connect and differentiate LGBTQ Jewish communities in Israel and in the United States. Adapting an autoethnography view reveals that American Jewish queer perspectives offers an important lens for rethinking contemporary Jewish belonging between national frameworks. Category 1, ageism and gay intergenerationality. 2 hours after the Honest of Shabbat, the service opened with an invitation for those who had participated in Stonewall Uprising to gather at the front of the sanctuary to light the Shabbat candle. Anyone who came out in 70s or earlier, or who was among the first member of this community, please come forward. Rabbi Kleinbaum invited. About 20 individuals slowly approached the bima, visibly moved and accompanied by sustained applause. Together with the congregation, they recited a blessing to light a Shabbat candle. Amen. Although Shabbat candle lighting is traditionally a domestic ritual, many non-Orthodox congregations, like CBST, Bet Simchat Torah, also perform it in the synagogue. In Judaism, light symbolizes remembrance, courage, and spiritual transcendence. Here, the Stonewall pioneers, the mother and the father of LGBTQ plus liberation movement, I just want to show you that here. A movement lit the candles as a powerful symbol of queer pride, replacing the darkness of LGBTQ phobia. Inviting this pioneer to participate conferred authenticity on the ritual. As scholars of memory have argued, witness play a central role in preserving collective remembrance, while in queer context, visibility is essential in making spaces as inclusive. The presence of Stonewall participants who late helped establish CBST legitimized the congregation as a founding institution with the broader LGBTQ rights movement. Moreover, the biblical injunction to remember and observe the Shabbat acquired a new meaning. Remembrance came to include not only Jewish tradition, but also the pain of life in the closet and the ongoing struggle for gender and sexual liberation. Beyond the politics of commemoration, however, I found myself reflecting on age and generation of queer elders standing before me. Synagogues are often spaces that honor older adults who sustain religious life and transmit tradition across generations. Genealogical research likewise link later life with increased religious and spiritual engagement. I found myself asking, when had I been surrounded by openly gay older men, particularly in religious setting? How familiar was I with these experiences and perspective? And how did I understand the more than 30 years age gap separating us within a shared community? LGBTQ communities often privilege youthful bodies and narrative, leaving older LGBTQ individuals relatively invisible and marginalized both within society, within the community itself. CBST challenges this ageism and embodies the biblical injunction, "You shall rise before the aged and honor the face of the elder." The experience reminded me of my earlier fieldwork in Reform Jewish congregation in central Tel Aviv between 2014 and 2017, where I first encountered openly gay congregants in their 60s and 70s. Those encounters not only introduced me to the history of the Israeli LGBTQ community, but also confronted me with my own anxieties about aging in the culture that celebrates youthful, athletics masculinity. I argue that these fears reflect a broader social phenomena. While research on older LGBTQ plus old adults in Israel remain limited, CBST presents an alternative model in which a religious community become a safe and affirm space for gay men will into a alter life. According to Harold Levin, CBST Vice President, about half of our members are over the age of 50, 55. During one of the conversation, he corrected me while with a smile, I'm 67, but I certainly don't think of myself as old. In New York, old begins about 75 or even later. Levin's emic perspective challenged my ethic assumptions about age, where old gay men's presence in queer spaces seemed entirely ordinary to me. It was far less familiar to me as an Israeli ethnographer coming from a community in which older gay men are frequently marginalized. My experience at CBST reinforced the idea that queer spaces of belonging need not to disappear with age. On the contrary, they can become places where people are valued across the life course. Category number 2 is the gay-lesbian encounter, which I will share with you.
Okay, Elazar, if we could just begin to wrap up now. If you could just begin to finish off now.
Okay, can I take only 1 minute?
Okay, yeah, just quickly. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So the second category was the encounter between me and lesbian women in the community, which is also not only the encounter between me as ethnographer, it's exposed new different dynamic between men and women in religious space, specifically when most of the religious and Jewish religious spaces are controlled by men. So this community led by women, and most of the congregates are lesbian women, which is create new discussion about the dynamic between homosexual gay men and lesbian women, different politics and different negotiations, which were appears during the fieldwork, which was very, very interesting. And maybe just one last sentence. I think this specific event in this specific synagogue can expose more than, a personal experience in a service. It could really expose how Jewish LGBTQ plus people create different interpretations and view about identity, affiliation, and sense of belonging to community or communities in broader understanding in the community in the LGBTQ plus community, to the LGBTQ plus community. What does it mean to be a part of the American LGBTQ plus community, part of the struggle to social justice and civil rights, and to the specific community, the Jewish community, and what does it mean to be part of the Jewish ethno-national people, which I found very interesting. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Next we have Sacha, who is online.
Hi, can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah, that's great. And the title is Disconnections of a Non-Binary Transmasculine Gender Right, Reflecting My Intersectional Gender-Refined Body into the World.
Hi. There's lots of thunder and lightning in the background, which is great for us because we've got super high temperatures here, so we're hoping it's coming down. So I hope it's not going to interfere with you being able to hear me. Okay, the following piece is part of my PhD, which has an occupational science and occupational therapy foundation. My research explores the lived experiences of trans, non-binary, and gender diverse people in their everyday activities. The following piece will be developed into a fully critical autoethnography in the coming year. So I've got several pieces. They start off this way and then I develop them more and more. I welcome any feedback, so just get in touch with me. I'm sure our email addresses and stuff are available. Just get in touch if you've got any feedback, because really for me today, presenting is very much part of my learning. Okay, so to start with, just take a step back and just breathe together for a moment and just recenter ourselves. If you feel able to do so, close your eyes and disconnect a little from your surroundings. Center your attention on your body. Notice your breathing. Feel the contact with the seat you may be sitting on, or if you're standing, the contact of your feet with the floor. Okay, so the title of this piece is Disconnections of a Non-Binary Transmasc Genderwright, Reflecting My Intersectional Gender-Refined Body into the World. A title with a punch, but how to lead you there? How do I enable you to access what I viscerally feel in body, mind, and soul? How do I show you the magical connections that happen for me in autoethnography? Autoethnography makes of me a maker and a joiner. Like the woodwrights of old, I learn my craft, carving a path through my experiences, following the grain of my sensations and emotions. With the critical autoethnography community around me, I am physically, cognitively, and emotionally learning in action. I am building from the wounds of intergenerational trauma that for me comes from a family's 100 years of passing as white, infusion of 2 languages and cultures, and centuries of working class oppression. My intersections intertwine as I communicate my lived body, non-binary, transmasculine experiences. I write to discover the connections to be made, reaching into myself and reaching out to others, self-inquiry and realization, and taking on the risks of rejection, falling down and getting back up again, and writing again, again, and again. As I embody my gender in autoethnography, I become a genderwright. The weight of the pen in my hand, gripping the smooth and dull of its surfaces, pressing it down onto the paper, pen moving in sync with the muscles in my arm and hand. Is it my hand that moves the pen, or is it the pen that moves my hand? Sometimes it feels like the latter, my internal voice flowing with the movement of the pen, the very focus of my being at its point. My senses are alert to the paper touching its surface, the papery smell as it warms with the contact of my skin, the sound of my forearm sliding across the page as I write, the pressure on the paper through my hand. The paper holds me, comforted, between the lines on the page, in the ink between the lines, in the words made of ink, in my thoughts forming words, in connections made. My left hand and forearm are supporting my head, tipped slightly on its side, elbow on the desk, stomach muscles relaxed, feet firmly on the ground. My right hand and arm are completely free to move, to write, shoulder and upper arm relaxed, in balance with my forearm, supported by the page that holds my body and receives my thoughts. When I write with pen and paper, I'm looking down and inside rather than forwards and outside when I write on a keyboard. That's how I feel it. As I look down at the paper, I see my breathing body, the rise and fall of my chest as I write. I feel the pull of the top surgery scarring with the movement of my torso and ribs. I feel the altered sensations from severed nerves and grafts. No longer the visual shock of a body that is alien to my sense of self, now the visual harmony of a body that mirrors my internal self. I feel my pelvis anchored to the seat as I write, heavy, stable, steady. For me, this was an unexpected result of my top surgery and hormonal transition. My perceived centre of gravity moved from my abdomen into my pelvis. Now I feel balanced, whereas before I felt unstable. Now my body holds me, whereas before I had to hold my body in place. After over 50 years of life, I finally feel complete and at ease in my body and connected physically to myself in a way that I never felt before. These sensations and thoughts give me peace. They remind me of who I am, of how I have survived, of how I have been able to affirm my non-binary transmasculine self. And through this physical self, this gender-refined body, my autoethnographic genderwright self takes form. But what of disconnection? I am asked to write a chapter for a book. I am asked to write a biography for the chapter. And here I confront the rejection of cisgendered heteronormative power that says I cannot be non-binary in my biography for the book. That if I insist, the penalty is rejection of my work outright. So I stand firm on my gender, and I am ignored, and my work is rejected outright. There is a shocking dissonance with such casual transphobia. I have stepped into diametric opposition, the balance of power far beyond my grip, an icy, impenetrable wall of cis heterodominance that says you may not enter, you do not conform, you do not belong, non-binary is not real, your body is an aberration, your mind and soul are warped. What it is to belong to the marginalised, the disempowered, the oppressed. My dog moves and snuggles at my feet, bringing me back to me as I write. This beautiful and kind non-human being does not judge me. To them, I just am as I am, and they help me to remember, reattach, resync, body, thoughts and pen. Re-anchored in my seat, my gender right self physically reconnecting to my thoughts at the speed that I write them, reconnecting me to you, the community of critical autoethnographers, pushing the boundaries, challenging injustice, and speaking your truths. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sacha. Thank you. And finally, we have, yes, Sabina Khan, independent scholar, storytelling as attempts at connection, a strange but familiar account.
Okay. So this is exactly 8 minutes, except that I'm adding that I finished my autoethnography last year, and it was entitled, and I'm very proud of the title. It was Intersectionality and Power, a psychotherapist's narratives of oppression and their impact on her sense of self, an autoethnographic exploration. So that's now gone over the minutes because I said that. Okay. There are many stories I tell others about my experiences of oppression in my early life as a girl and young woman, born and raised under apartheid in South Africa, in a Muslim and Indian family with an indentureship history. Evocative dinner party pieces that both move and amuse. But there are also many stories that I don't tell others, that capture the fear and hopelessness that I and perhaps other humans can feel in everyday encounters that reproduce our shared subjection to power. The following 2 pieces are examples that have evolved from mutterings into a voice recorder during a night of anxious gastric pain, which sounded like they should be performed, into a playful performance autoethnography, a strange but familiar account of hidden or unrecognized identity, queering or disrupting the normative, gatekeeping, and the fear surrounding speaking and autoethnographic research. So, part 1. The signifier is different from the signified. This is a conversation with a friend, or maybe not a friend, maybe an acquaintance, maybe a colleague, maybe it's someone I love or don't love, maybe it's someone I've known all my life, maybe it's someone I've come to know, trust, and value in my new home across the world from where I was born. Maybe it's someone from my original home across the world where I was born. Maybe we have a conversation and I share a story, because I like to tell stories. Maybe I say something about my work that goes like this. I've been getting lots of inquiries from queer clients in Pakistan, or it could be India, or it could be the Emirates. Maybe I'm just talking about inquiries from Muslim clients who are also queer. Maybe the person I'm talking to, curious about the country I mentioned, replies with a question that goes like this. Oh, is it rife there? Maybe I reply that it is everywhere. And later, maybe I wish I had said, we are everywhere. Maybe I ponder later, what do they mean? What do they mean? What do they mean by is it rife there? Rife, as in an abnormal activity, a pathology, a criminal activity? For them, it is a pathology. For me, it is being part of an oppressed minority. Maybe I want to have a conversation with this person about what they mean, but maybe I don't know how to in the moment. And maybe later I wonder about how I can reconcile the way they see it, them, us, me, and our relationship. They see it as a pathology, and I see it as a minoritized, socially constructed identity. Me. Maybe the person was a feminist or not a feminist, maybe a sociologist, psychologist, psychotherapist, writer, or maybe not someone schooled in social criticism. Maybe the person was a Muslim, Christian, or atheist. Maybe there was someone who has known me all my life. Or maybe it's not someone I feel deeply connected to. And maybe I wonder how I can reconcile this difference between us and my love for them, or not, as the case may be, depending on who they are to me. The signifier, is it rife there, in this account, is probably not the same as what those words signified for me. I don't know what the speaker meant, but their words come to mean something specific to me, revealing the workings of power through language and organizing me intersubjectively to feel other. I reflect in my journal. It is a kind of madness, a postmodernist angst. There is no self. I am constantly shape-shifting in relation to the other. What if I didn't and pointed out the microaggressions I perceive from all directions? Life would become a battle. I notice the urge to stay in bed and hide. I think I'm a bit down, but really, I'm exhausted in the body and brain. Gender battle fatigue. Part 2. The stranger or feminist killjoy. Maybe I tell this person or group of people, this acquaintance, this dear friend, this colleague, this fellow therapist, or maybe not a therapist, this composite character, this amalgamation of individuals that are in relationship with me. Perhaps a significant other, perhaps less significant. This person who is ubiquitous in my social world and everywhere. Maybe I tell them another story, because I like to tell stories, about a feminist conference I once went to. It is, after all, a story I love to tell. Maybe I tell them about a woman I saw there who had long, dark facial hair on her chin and huge pendulous breasts that rested low down on her belly because she wore no bra, who I thought was beautiful and extremely sexy in her natural and unaltered state. Maybe I tell the story because I'm worried about my own facial hair as a menopausal woman on testosterone supplements, and I want to align myself with the celebration of being. Maybe I tell the story because I want to counter the current discourse in the conversation I'm listening to that is celebrating normative and patriarchal ideals of feminine beauty. Maybe I want to challenge their constructed ideas of beauty from which I feel excluded when I tell the story of the women with and pendulous breasts. Maybe the friend, colleague, composite character goes, ew, was she dirty? Was she a down and out? Questioning the woman's self-care. And maybe I want to challenge the assumptions made in this response and point out the gatekeeping by this person who maybe calls themselves a feminist or not. Maybe I cannot find the words in the moment. Maybe I am deeply hurt. Maybe I am deeply angry. Maybe I take the home hurt with me and turn the conversation around in my head 100 times because I care about the person who said this to me. Maybe I dismiss the person and I resolve to see less of them because I don't care about the person who said this. Maybe if I care about the person, I might ask to meet for a coffee to talk about it. Maybe we meet and the gatekeeping is even more furious. Maybe they say something like, what's really going on is that you thought that I was saying that you weren't beautiful. But I don't think that. And maybe I am silenced as I am slotted into the norm and assured I fit. And maybe I can't argue with that. Maybe it reminds me of an old boyfriend who used to silence me with, "You look so pretty when you're angry." Maybe I tell the story again to someone else a month or two later. Maybe they say something like, "Oh my, a hirsute goddess, how wonderful." And maybe it is. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, we have 15 minutes, I think, for conversation.
Yeah, thank you all. Don't know where to look. Thank you all for a wonderful session. I feel a bit guilty picking and responding in question to one person, but I'm going to. So, Sacha, I was just really taken with your exploration about feeling different in your body following top surgery. I haven't really thought about that in terms of trans experience. I'm wondering, so you said you'd ask for feedback. I'd love to read some more of that. I wonder if you could say a bit more about that and maybe how that fits with your experience on a day-to-day basis. Is it a day-to-day issue? Is there potential to explore that and the feeling senses in our body of what it is to be what we are or what we're not, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, the presentation that I did at the conference last year was talking about when I was binding before surgery, actually, and that was part of the account that I was talking about. It wasn't the central theme, but it was part of it. And I think because I have an occupational therapy, occupational science kind of perspective, we think very much about the connections between the physical body, the cognitive self, and the emotional self. And part of that is around sensory integration. So how our senses kind of integrate in terms of, yes, touch, smell, sound, etc. But also in terms of, a vestibular sense of gravity. And I think that's something that I'm very, very aware of in my profession. And I do wonder if that is something that that other trans folk, non-binary folk, gender diverse folk experience either when they're binding in terms of center of gravity, but also sort of post-surgery and also hormonally how that changes. I believe that taking, for example, estrogen can make you more touch sensitive, even in sort of fingertips and those kinds of things. And I think it's a huge area that I feel's never really been explored. And so very much I was wanting that to be part of my autoethnographic accounts. I mean, obviously it means exposing myself to the world in that sense. But I feel it's really important because it's part of your everyday, and obviously any movement that I make, I feel that in my body, but I find it really reassuring. It's kind of interesting, that difference between perhaps surgery that one may have had for an accident or for an injury or for an illness, which is a constant reminder of that illness, but whereas this kind of sensation is gender affirming. So I think there's a whole world of kind of work and exploration to do there. So thank you for that comment.
Oh, okay, yeah. So my name's Jen, and I was really interested in Luke's presentation on Please Stop Attacking My Marriage, because in the UK, I'm quite interested in how different institutions allow one to have your relationships recognised. Obviously, there's marriage and civil partnerships. A lot of the time in the UK, if you're living with somebody for a certain period of time, then you are also granted the rights of a partner. A friend of mine, I've got to be careful, they were detained under the Mental Health Act recently, and they have a hand-fasted marriage in a spiritual context, but they live separately. Unfortunately, they don't have that recognition of a legally recognised registration or cohabiting. So actually that person has really, is not able to access any of the rights and the rights that kind of a life partner typically would. You know, they've been hand-fasted for nearly 7 years, but choose to have separate households. And I think Luke's presentation made me reflect on how, you know, there is still formalizations around bricks and mortar and pieces of paper rather than maybe alternative forms of spirituality as well.
Luke, I'm not sure if you want to respond at all. It was more of a comment than a question. So, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Gabs. Luke, I just want to thank you. You've really reframed the way I've been thinking. So for me, I have been almost actively avoiding places where I felt like it's not maybe open or accepting, and especially in the UK at the moment, for me, it feels like we're really taking a shift to more of like a right sort of political stance. And I've been saying to my husband, like, I don't want to go there. It's not, you know, welcoming to the queer community, to maybe more sort of liberal ways of being. And when you said, I'm not leaving because who's going to stand up for us and speak for us? And it's just made me go, fuck, yeah, like, yeah, I'm not helping by avoiding these places. Like, I need to be going and showing up and advocating and being. So thank you. That really changed it. I wanted to go to Vegas, my 30th. And I was like, no, I'm not going to the States or certain place in the UK where I don't feel like people are welcome. And so thank you. It's really made me think like, no. So yeah, cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you for both of the comments, by the way, and I would love to speak with both of you later more on these things. One thing I wanted to add to that is part of me getting married in 2020 was moving from, I lived in a tiny pocket in Nashville that was like the most liberal pocket in East Nashville, very accepting, very affirming, those kind of things. And when I got married, for us to build a life together, I had to move to the smallest town I've ever lived in what felt like the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. And I was terrified to do that because I thought this is going to be a place that I won't be able to be myself. I will have to be a smaller version of myself. And I've worked so hard to not do that in my life that it really worried me a lot. And I actually recently wrote a book chapter in a book about queer life that's rural, about how much I found that I was bringing a lot of prejudices with me to places. And I had to do a lot of work on myself about that. And I think a lot of times we can bring a lot of prejudices with us that we have to undo and unlearn and work on ourselves, especially to live in certain types of places and especially to find community in certain types of places. And so I really appreciate you saying that, but also want to acknowledge that I'm still a work in progress trying to unlearn things that allow me to be connected to the community there, especially when it is difficult a lot of the time, but also way more affirming and beautiful than I ever expected. So I appreciate your comments and the other ones as well.
Anybody online? Jess.
Hello, Jess Moriarty from Brighton. Thank you to everyone that spoke today so movingly and articulate as well. It's really fascinating to hear your stories. Sabina, thank you for your story. I was wondering, what was the process? Was it around, did you come up with the concept of using them maybe, or was it thinking, how do you navigate the ethical choices of doing autoethnography? Can you just give us a little insight into your process, if that's all right? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think the process of writing the autoethnography, I mean, and kind of touching parts of my traumatized selves that had not been touched in psychotherapy. And, you know, I've been lots of, I'm a psychotherapist, I've had loads of therapy, but we reach the political, but we never quite look at, I mean, we touch the personal, but we look at the developmental, mummy, daddy, we don't look at mummy and daddy as like situated culturally. And so I think at some point when all that started emerging, I literally had PTSD. Yeah, there were increasingly, it's like my relational self was kind of, I was hypervigilant and everything was heightened. And, you know, I'd go and see an exhibition and I'd have so much to write. I was writing through the trauma every day. It was a way of coping. And yeah, and then I'd see some friends and every word I was kind of deconstructing. And so this is what kept happening with me. And then I think in a period of 2 weeks, I'd had quite a few of those in my rare visits outside my house to the world. And yeah, one night I'd just been to an exhibition, an exhibition on like lesbian images of, yeah, anyway, it was very moving. And I came home, I'm sitting with various encounters I've had, and I just couldn't sleep the whole night. My body was just, you know, gastric pain, up or really suffering, and also thinking about things that had happened. So I just spoke into my voice recorder, and it was pretty, yeah, thinking about a particular incident. And yeah, and when I listened to it the next morning, I thought, oh my God, that sounds like it should be performed. But of course, I then had to think about, with care, ethically, how do I manage this? Because this has happened. You know, how do I share this? But also, it's really revealing something. And I know that many of us feel this way. So how do I share this? That felt very ethically important for me to do. So then there was just this big puzzle about how do I do it. Fortunately, that very day I had read, At Play in the Field of Autoethnography by Rambo and Pruitt. So yeah, that's kind of how that went. But it felt really important that I share the stories I don't tell. Because there's so many stories I can tell that are well known to me consciously. There's many that I hide. And there's many stories that emerged in the process of the research that I tell myself outside of conscious awareness, and that also kind of reproduce the structures that have oppressed me, and I do it best. I do it better than what's out there. So the personal is political became the political is personal. Yeah.
Okay, so we've reached 10 o'clock, so the end of the first session. So thank you. Just want to thank all of our presenters again. Really